Hi there, we are back in the kitchen. I have my first picking of green beans from the garden. So while they are as fresh as they will ever be, straight picked from the garden just a day or so ago, I don't want them hanging around too long before I get them canned up. So this is a perfect canning project to do after work. I suggest you do it on a day where maybe you're having leftovers, somebody else might be cooking, or a fun for yourself kind of night maybe. But this is a very quick, easy, you don't have to prepare a whole lot. You could even do this part the night before, come in and just start filling jars. If you are new here to my channel, I'm Angela, and this is Angela's Pantry Obsession. And we are spending the garden harvest season learning to can with one another. Stocking my pantry in hopes that showing you what I do, you will then start to stock your own pantry. So we have done quite a few projects now together in the kitchen. We've done quite a bit of pressure canning as well as water bath canning. Today, the green beans we are doing is a pressure canning project. Green beans are a low acid food. You can pickle a green bean. Those are called dilly beans. And what that is you are basically making a vinegar brine to create an acidic environment for those green beans to live in. Well, I don't want dilly beans. I want straight green beans for the dinner table. And so we have to pressure can in order to make sure that we put them up on our shelf safely. We have also discussed, and you've heard me say every single canning session we've been a part of together, hot food, hot jars, hot canner. Well, today is our very first cold pack canning project with one another. What that means is I'm taking room temperature food, room temperature jars, and the water in my canner is more or less room temperature. And once we get these filled with the green beans and water, the jars will go into the canner and everything will be brought up to temperature together at the same time. This is called cold packing. You can do a hot pack method if you wish to with your green beans. I would say most of the time you don't see a lot of people opt to do that because you don't want to heat your green beans any longer than need be. They are going to cook in the pressure canning process, so I don't want to cook them ahead of time. We all know a canned green bean already comes out, soft, so I opt to skip that and just do a cold pack method. There's really no rhyme or reason on getting them into your jar. You just want to make sure you can fit as many as possible in there without, of course, absolutely cramming your green beans in there. You want to still be able to get the jars filled with water so that everything stays at that 1-inch headspace. We will still debubble like we do every single time. The only difference that this process has is just everything is room temperature instead of cooked. But our steps stay the same. The process is the same. We still have to make sure we know what our elevation is. We need to know how many pounds of pressure we are processing our jars under. and we need to know for how long the jars need to process for. Which I actually am going to check that here in a minute. I don't remember what green beans process at. We are doing pints today, but there is a different time for quarts compared to pints. So you'll just need to check the processing time, which I will provide for you as well once I refer back to my canning book. So all I'm doing is I have washed green beans, and I won't make you sit here and watch me the entire time do this, but my beans have been washed, and I'm just snapping off that top, maybe the bottom if it needs it, and I'm just breaking them into sizes that will fit into my jar nicely. I will, of course, toss aside any green beans that maybe don't look very good. We don't want to use questionable vegetables in canning. We really want to use the best quality food when we are canning and preserving. If they seem to be stringy, of course, try to remove that string before putting it into your jar, because how it goes into your jar is exactly how it's going to come out of your jar. I try my best every year to grow green beans that don't have that string. This year I grew 2 different varieties, and I couldn't remember which ones were, stringy. I also had been gone out of town for several days, and it had been 5 days since I checked my garden, and unfortunately there were a few green beans that kind of got away from me, and so that tends to be when they start to grow a little mature and develop that string in there. So that's all I'm doing. I have my jars are completely washed and sanitized. My green beans, as I said, have been washed, and now I'm just prepping them and stuffing them into my jar. What I will not be adding today is salt. We've had that conversation in the past as well about how you can monitor the salt that you put into your canned food. I opt to salt my green beans when they're on the plate or in the pot when I am cooking my side dish. I a lot of times make a southern style green bean dish that I then cook my green beans in ham stock, which is very salty. So I don't need to add salt to my jars, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. So I am snapping them, and I'm kind of just tossing them around in the jar just to get them to fit a little bit better. And once I'm ready to get these jars filled with water, I will bring you back and we will discuss headspace and debubbling and give you an idea of what that looks like. And we'll continue the process from there. referencing the Complete Guide to Home Canning, I've shared this book with you already. This is a free resource as long as it's in electronic form. You can pay to have it printed off if you'd like, but it is free as long as you download it and keep it electronically. So I'm going to look up my processing time for my green beans, and you will notice when you are referencing the vegetables, there is a different processing time for shelled peas. There's different processing time for baked beans, lima beans, and then there's the category of beans or snap and Italian. That's where we fall in line for our green beans. So when you're looking up your processing time, there is two methods to look. You have your weighted pressure canning, and then you also have a dial gauge. So the pressure canners come in two different varieties. You have a weight that you can put on top once your canner has been building up, expelling out the air. You put this on. Once this is officially on, that's when your canner will go under pressure, and it takes a while for it to build enough pressure for your gauge to either shake or for your dial gauge to read how many pounds of pressure you're under. So you need to know which particular canner you are using so that you can follow the processing time accordingly for both. And that's where we've discussed knowing your elevation to know how many pounds of pressure, whether it's by weighted gauge or by the dial gauge, that you need to know how much pounds of pressure you're going to be canning under. So my processing time for the raw pack, as we discussed, cold food, cold canner, cold jars. So the raw for pints, I will be processing for 20 minutes for pints. If you're doing quarts, it's 25 minutes. So it's a very quick, short process to do your green beans. Again, making it a good project to come in and do after work. So you saw me expel the air bubbles. We debubbled a few of them up close so you can kind of see how I'm taking my knife and running along the side of the jar. I want to release any air bubbles, and I'm also trying to make space for the water to officially fall through every single one of these green bean pieces. I don't want any air trapped in here, because once this jar is sealed, if there's air trapped in there, that's going to develop bacteria and spores that you do not want to consume. So this is a process that, like I've said before, cannot be skipped, should not be skipped, and is incredibly just as important as any other step in the process. So we're going to get these all debubbled, and once you do that, you will see that your green beans are actually floating a little bit more freely, because the water has now engulfed pretty much every single piece for you. And your head space might change, and if that's the case, then just add a little bit more water to make sure you're continuing to stay at that 1-inch head space. Now, with wiping the rims of your jars, I did not add anything in here, no salt or any kind of small particles that could get onto the rim, but it's just a good practice to be in, to go ahead and just wipe your rims anyway. You don't need to use vinegar though for something like this, because it's not a greasy food, and again, I didn't use any salt, so I'm not worried about anything actually being on the rims of my jar. We'll place our lid, we'll get our ring on, fingertip tight. And that's gonna go sit in the canner. I should also mention that some people might have an issue with using a metal utensil. My debubbler is messy, or dirty, and I don't know where my chopstick is. Just don't bang at the bottom of your jars and you'll be fine. Since I don't have a full canner, I am going to fill the rest of my jars up with water. I'm going to process them along with the green beans, and these can sit on my shelf as potable, sterile water. They take up just as much space empty as they do full, so I am trying this canning season to fill my canners, even if it means using the dummy jars. This way, in an emergency, you have drinking water as well, and it doesn't take up any more space. In fact, your canner runs a little bit more efficiently the fuller it is. So okay, lock your lid on, turn your heat up, and you're going to wait for it to build pressure. It's going to expel the steam for 10 minutes out of the petcock, and it's got to be a very fierce steam, not just a poof of steam every now and again. It has to be a non-stop stream of steam. You'll set a timer for 10 minutes. Once that timer is complete, you will put your gauge on and you will bring it up to pressure. And then once it's up to pressure and your gauge starts to rock, or your dial shows that it's under the appropriate amount of pressure, that's when you start your timer for 20 minutes for pints, 25 minutes for quarts.